everyone, this is Marika and welcome back to another session with me. So in our previous session, we were discussing different methods of teaching, right? We have seen what is lecture method, what is demonstration method, what is a seminar, and we have also discussed about these different methods of teaching, how it can be used appropriately, what are the advantages and what are the several disadvantages of different methods, right? Today, we are going to see a very important and a very interesting method of teaching, that is field trip. Now, from the term itself, you can understand what kind of teaching or what is this method of teaching, right? A field trip. Now, a field trip can be considered as a field trip can be called as an audio-visual media. Why? Because it brings the students into direct contact with the natural setting of the particular thing, right? So, field trip is an audio-visual media which a student uses, right? Which is used for the students to enhance their learning. And in field trip, the students are able to observe the real life situation. The students or the learners see the real life situation and see the things as they exist in their natural form, right? By looking at the things, how they exist, how they function in the natural setting, the students get to learn better, right? So field trip is a process of learning in which the students are brought into direct real life situation. Now, field trip is the most real and most concrete audio visual media or an audio visual procedure, right? So in field trip, the students, as I said, can see what actually is a real life situation. The students are able to see, touch things and observe things in their natural setting, right? How they actually exist. The elements in the natural form, how they exist or how they function, right? So it is considered as most concrete and most real audio visual procedure. Now let us see the definition of field trip. A field trip can be considered as an educational process or an educational procedure. Students study the first-hand information by observing places, by observing objects, phenomena and process in the natural setting, right? So as I said in the introduction, in field trip, the students are able to observe a real life situation, right? The students are able to understand the elements, how they actually exist, how do they actually function, right? So students through field trip get a first-hand information. How? By observing certain objects, by observing certain procedures, phenomena, or a process, right? Or it can be a place as well. Students get first-hand information through observation in a field trip, right? So the observation that takes place of an object, of a place, or any phenomena or a process happens in their natural setting, right? This will help the student to learn better and it will also help the student to enrich whatever lecture or whatever class is taken for them. A field trip can also be called as excursion or an educational trip, right? So every organization, every different educational institution usually organizes for an educational trip. So the main purpose of organizing an educational trip is to make sure that students observe all the objects, all the places or any kind of phenomena that they have to learn in the natural setting so that they get the first-hand information. Now, when we talk about nursing, if we think about nursing education has used field trip for a quite long time now, right? All the clinical postings that our students are sent for is a kind of field trip. The students goes to the natural setting, right? They observe the patients in the hospital or in the community or in a mental health center, right? They go to a natural setting where actually things are taking place and they get the first-hand information. They get to experience what it is to be a nurse, right? Similarly, like that, in nursing education, students are taken for visit to various rehabilitation center, various therapy departments, right? All these things are actually a field trip for nursing student. Now, all this exposure will help the students to gain first-hand information by observing all the things that is taking place within a clinical setting, within a community area, or within a mental health center, rehabilitation center in their natural setting, right? cut. This will give students a proper understanding of what it is actually to be a nurse. What are the various activities that the nurse must carry out, and what are the different types of patient that a nurse has to deal with, right? And various other things that they can learn from a field trip, which is a clinical visit or a clinic cut, which is clinical posting. Now, as I said, through clinical cut, through educational trip or through this field trip, nursing students will be able to gather first-hand information, first-hand knowledge about the particular phenomena or about the particular process. Now, few of the examples of a field trip where a nursing students are sent and they observe the phenomena and they get the first-hand information is, first one is rehabilitation program, right? Nursing students are sent to various rehabilitation centers to see the progress of the student, to understand, to see the progress of the patients, right? To see what it is actually to be in the rehabilitation center, what are the different types of procedure that is followed in a rehabilitation center to make sure that patient gain their efficiency, to make sure that patient gain their pre-disease functioning level. Next one is physical therapy in an outpatient setting, right? This is also one of the example of field trip for nursing students. Nursing students can also be sent for schools of deaf and blind people. When the nursing students are sent to the schools of deaf and blind, they understand the students of those kind of schools, right? How it is to teach them. What are the different procedures that we have to follow to teach to such kind of students? Next one is school for the handicapped children, occupational nursing, school nursing, and various family services. Now, as I said, in nursing education, various postings that as a nursing student has to go from first year to 4 years of time, right? All those postings that the student is sent for, all the visits the students are taken for, all comes under field trip. The students are sent for postings or visit so that they get to see and observe things on their own in their natural setting and gain first-hand knowledge. Now, moving on, let us see what are the purposes of field trip. Why field trip is a method of teaching? What is the actual purpose of field trip? The first one, of course, is to provide real life situation to gain first-hand information. So from the introduction to the definition, we've been seeing this, right? The main purpose is that the students get to observe, have the opportunity to observe the real life situations, what is actually happening, what is actually going on. They have to observe so that they get first-hand information. Next one is to supplement classroom instruction. So as I said, field trip is used to enrich the lecture or the class that has been taken for the students, right? So whatever instructions the students have got within the classroom, whatever classes were taken for them, right? For them to understand those topics better, the students are sent for field trip. Now, if we take nursing, for example, in nursing, we are taught about all the theoretical procedures that are to be carried out in a clinical setting, right? After we are taught about all the procedures and all the responsibility as a nurse we must carry out in the ward, we are sent for clinical posting. So to enrich whatever the student have learned, right? They have learned theoretically so that they can see it in person and in a natural setting, the students are sent for field trip. Next one is to verify previous information or classroom discussion, right? So as I said, it helps to enrich what is already learned, right? So previous knowledge of the student or whatever was discussed within the classroom during the group discussion, to make sure that it is actually happening and taking place in person, right? To see, to observe the phenomena, field trip is used. Next one is to cultivate keenness within the students, to cultivate interest and motivation within the students. So observing a certain phenomena or visiting a certain place and seeing how it actually works, what actually happens in that area, it helps the student to develop interest, keenness on that particular topic, right? It will also help the students to develop their observational skills, right? They are taken for an observational visit, right? The student goes and observe everything that is being carried out in the particular setting. So it will help them to develop their observation skill as well. Next one is to serve as a means of positive attitude development, skill development, and development of certain values. Next one is field trip gives the learner natural stimulation that motivates and makes the learner creative and interactive, right? Now, once the learner have observed what actually it is, how it actually occurs, what are the different problems that is encountered in the particular setting, in a practical setting, right? It will help them to become creative, and it will also help them, it will also motivate the learners. Now, those are the various purposes of field trip. Let us see how is a field trip organized, organization of field trips. Now, the first essential prerequisites for any successful field trip is a well thought out plan, right? To organize any field trip, first there must be a proper planning. Now we are going to see certain steps which helps or which guides the organization of field trip. If these guidelines and steps are followed to organize a field trip, it turns out to be a successful one. Let us see what are those steps which helps to organize a field trip in a better way. The first one is knowledge of resources. The second one is rapport with the personnel in the institution where there is a visit. The third one is the objectives of the visit. One is time and transportation. The fifth one is preparation of students. And the last one is supervision. So there are 6 steps involved in organization of field trip, right? Let us see one by one what are those steps and what are the things that are to be done. So the first one is knowledge of resources. The knowledge of the places which actually has the potential to provide appropriate nursing education experiences. Under the knowledge of resources, we have to do a survey of different places. So we have to do a survey of different places which actually offers potential educational experiences, right? So for a field trip to be organized, if I am taking a field trip for a group of students, I have to know which are the different places that offers the same kind of educational experiences and which one is the best one, right? So we have to do a survey not just of the particular area but also of the community as a whole in which that area is located, so that we understand which place offers the best educational experience for the students, right? For example, if I want to take students to rehabilitation center to understand the procedure of rehabilitation better, right? Now, before I take the students to a rehabilitation center, I have to understand which are the different rehabilitation center, where are those rehabilitation centers located, and which offers the best type of treatment to the patient or which offers the best kind of services to their clients, right? Now, I have to understand which rehabilitation organization is the best for my students so that they get the maximum output from it. So I have to make sure that I do a survey not just of the particular place but also of the community in which those places or those organizations are located, and have to choose the one which will provide the best educational experience for the students. Now for each trip, for each educational trip, we have to analyze and we have to find out what education values can be obtained from those trips. Okay, so field trips are not organized for no reason, right? We have seen there are various purposes of field trips. So as a teacher, the teacher must analyze that every field trip will provide the best education value to the students. Next one is rapport. Establish and maintain a cordial relationship with the people who are in charge of the particular place to be visited. So it is the role of the teacher to make sure that the teacher informs, right? And the teacher maintains a good relationship, a cordial relationship with the personnel of the place to be visited. The teacher has to make sure that the authority or the people in charge of the place to be visited are well informed about the trip. They know that this particular day, the people of the place to be visited must be aware about the students, the number of students, on which day those students are coming, and for what purpose are those students coming to the particular institution. Okay, so maintaining a cordial relationship is the first step in the development of field trip. Now, a friendly welcome by the authorities or the people in charge of the place to be visited is always conducive to good learning. If the teachers and students visit to a place and if the people responsible there welcomes the students and the teacher, it makes the environment better. It makes the student comfortable and the students feel like learning more. If the teachers and students are not welcomed, right? If they are thought to be, someone to be tolerated, then the enthusiasm of learning will be decreased. The students will lose their interest and the field trip will not be fruitful. Okay, so in rapport, it is the role of the teacher to make sure that they establish and they maintain a cordial relationship with the authorities or with the people of the particular place to be visited. It is a first step in the development of field trip, right? If the students are welcomed, right? If the authorities are well informed, and if they are not welcomed, then the students' enthusiasm to learn will be decreased, their interest will be decreased. So to maintain a good rapport is also very important in organization of a field trip. The next one is objectives. So field trip, as I said, is a method of teaching, and for any method of teaching to be effective, we need to have educational objectives that are to be fulfilled. So the teacher has to state the objectives very clearly before the students are taken for the field trip. The teacher has to also see, after the formulation of the objective, the teacher also has to see what are the different learning activities that the students can be involved in, right? And the teacher has to plan the field trip accordingly. Next one is time and transportation. Now, obviously, for a field trip, since we know that we are visiting to another place, transportation must be arranged. Make necessary arrangement for the transportation and time. The time of visit, the length of the visit also must be decided before the actual visit. So, about the time of the visit and length of the trip, the administrative personnel of the place to be visited must be well informed, right? They must know at what particular time are the students of this college coming, right? How long will those students be here for the trip? So all this must be planned and informed to the people which the educational visit or trip is planned. Next one is planning of transportation, right? So planning of transportation can be done with the students. The teacher can get involved with the student and plan for transportation. Now the teacher has to make sure all the students have proper transportation. Next, we have preparation of students. Must be made in connection with a certain unit or a certain project that the students have to do, right? So a field trip is planned. So a field trip is planned according to the demand of the unit, demand of the topic. So the teacher has to see under which topic actually field trip is required, under which project the students are supposed to go for a field trip so that they can enrich their learning. So a good field trip is not just for taking students and showing what actually a procedure is or what actually a phenomena is, but it should help the students, but it should also stimulate the students to think about the importance of it, the purpose of it, right? Why are we brought for a field trip? Why was it necessary for us to come for a field trip? What is the importance of this field trip? What is the purpose of observing this phenomena? What is the use of getting the first-hand information from this particular aspect, from this particular area? And what are the different objectives? So a good field trip must stimulate the students to think about all these things rather than just going and observing the place. Next one, we have supervision. A field trip must be well supervised by the teacher in order to protect the students as well as the school or the college from which the students are visiting. Now, safety and comfort of the student must be maintained. It must be the primary concern of the teacher. So, safety and comfort is provided to the students by giving proper instructions to the students. Type of transportation and everything must be properly instructed and explained to the students. What is the time that we are visiting? How the students are going to be transported to those places, right? What is the transportation that is needed? Right? And what is the length of the visit? Where are all the students supposed to gather? So all this information are to be given clearly before the trip is planned. So a trip must proceed in an orderly manner with all the students alert and active, right? For the trip to be successful, the students have to be alert, they have to be active, and it has to proceed in an orderly manner so that the students learn better. So these are the various steps involved in an organization of field trip. Let us see what are the advantages of field trip. The first one is it furnishes first-hand information. It provides first-hand information to the students so that their learning from the class can be enhanced or enriched. Field trip will help the student correlate their school and college life with outside world. So the students are there in the school just learning it in theory. It will help the student blend their school life with the outside world. Next one is better understanding of the etiology of a disease condition. This is especially for nursing, right? How does a disease occur? What are the etiologies of the diseases? Or to understand other aspects like sanitation and industry better. Next one is to create situation which helps to observe or which helps to develop observation. So field trips are usually observational visit, right? The students observe a particular phenomena or a process, right? So it will help the students to develop observation skills better. The next advantage is to provide actual material of study, right? Just not just the books that the student refer, but the student actually get the information from the primary source. Next one is to arouse the interest and to help in the motivation of the students. Next one is field trip serves as an effective means of reducing the boredom of the classroom. It becomes very monotonous for the students. While when the students are taken for a field trip, it becomes interesting. It arises the interest of the students, and also the method of teaching becomes very exciting. Right? So these are the various advantages of field trip. It helps the student to get a better understanding, to gain first-hand information. The monotony or the boredom of a classroom teaching is reduced, and the students also get the information from the first-hand source, or they get the actual source of study material, right? So these are all the different advantages of field trip. The disadvantage of a field trip includes sometimes to plan a field trip is not possible with a large number of students, and sometimes to obtain permission from a particular organization also becomes difficult for the organization. So these are the only two disadvantages of field trip. So to summarize, today we have seen what is a field trip, what are the different purposes of field trip, and how a field trip can be organized, and what are the different advantages and few disadvantages of field trip. I hope the class was helpful, and I'll see you all in the next session where we will be discussing another method of teaching. Thank you and have a great day.